Today, live from the St. Louis Chess Club, we have a repeat of a classic matchup in the U.S. Women's Chess Championship. Defending champion Irina Krush once again faces Anna Zatonsky, and like so many times before, it promises to be thrilling. Look at their classic finish from the 2008 championship. That happens right now at the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships here in St. Louis. Hello and welcome to the 2014 U.S. Chess Championships and U.S. Women's here in St. Louis, the capital of chess in America. We are in the beautiful Central West End, right across the street from the World Chess Hall of Fame, at the St. Louis Chess Club, which Garry Kasparov calls the nicest chess club in the world. This is the 6th year running that the U.S. Chess Championship and the U.S. Women's have been held here. And as we see, the players are beginning their games. We've got a lot of excitement today. I can't wait to see how the games unfold. We're really at the critical moment here of both championships. We see Hikaru Nakamura and Sam Shankland already beginning their game. I'm Jennifer Shahade. This is Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan.
Pleasure to be with you today, Jen. I'm excited as well.
And let's take a look at the standings in the U.S. Chess Championship. We have Hikaru Nakamura. He grew up in Armenia, moved to Los Angeles. Now he's basically a local.
Topeka, Kansas.
That's right. And he is a point ahead of the field here in the U.S. Chess Championship. Outstanding performance. And right behind him, within striking distance, a 1-point deficit, Kamsky, our defending champion, and Alexander Lenderman, who's had a really topsy-turvy event. Over in the Women's Championship, Anna Zatonsky is dominating so far. She is a point ahead of her nearest rival, of course, none other than Grandmaster Irina Krush. And luckily for Irina, they play today, so she has a chance to catch up with Anna with a win in this game. Meanwhile, Tatev Abrahamian is also within striking distance. Let's see what Grandmaster Maurice Ashley has to say about the critical matchups today at the Women's and U.S. Championship.
Well, it's no doubt that today is a big day for both championships. First of all, the men battle. It's all about Hikaru Nakamura. He's playing against Grandmaster Sam Shankland, who is known to be an opening specialist, particularly with the white pieces. So he will be testing VAR in this round. And Hikaru definitely has a challenge now because he is being chased after this game by two amazing contenders. First of all, Kamsky, the defending champion, who is looking to hunt him down and catch him if possible. They will be playing tomorrow, and he will then have to play against Lenderman, who's also only a point behind. Lenderman was an early leader in the championships, looking to get that lead back. So Hikaru Nakamura will want to do very well today in order to be ready for those two games. However, it's all about the women this time. It's Irina and Anna yet again, and the magic number is 8. They're in round 8 of the championships. In the last 8 games they have played, actually in the 8 games they have played in the championships, they are tied 2-2 and 4 draws. And also in the last 8 championships, guess who've won? These two women as well, and they have split those 8 4-4. Well, Irina has the edge there actually because in 1998, she won her first title, so she's sitting on 5 titles right now. Anna Zatonsky does not want to lose today. She definitely wants to press, and if she can manage to win this game, then she will assure herself of the FIS championship. But no doubt, the defending champion, Irina Krush, has a lot to say about that, so expect an exciting battle today. Back to you guys.
That's right, and remember Irina Krush, when she won her first championship, she was only 14 years old. Can you believe that?
It's stunning. It really, really is stunning.
Now, last year when she played against Anna, she was actually black, and she won on the black side of a King's Indian defense.
Right. I recall that game very vividly as black built up this wonderful attack on the King side in the King's Indian in King's Indian defense, and it was a very, very nice game by Arena. But today is an epic battle between these two, a great rivalry spanning the years, and really this is the deciding game for the championships. Still, crazy things can happen in round 9, but I expect the outcome of this game to determine the winner.
Although, if Irina wins, then they're actually only tied.
Then we could have a playoff.
We would have a high chance for a playoff, but obviously the 9th round will also determine whether both players earn that right.
Clear.
And in this game, it looks like Irina has decided to play without the d4 moves. She's played c4 and g3. You know, Anna Zatonsky's most famous win against Irina Krush was back in the 2009 U.S. Women's Chess Championship, where she had a very quick win with the black pieces, and she ended up snagging Irina's queen on the queen side. It was this really nice little trap. And that was in a Queen's Gambit declined. Awesome. So this kind of stops that.
That's true. And with the move G2, G3, essentially what I think Arena is trying to say with this move G2, G3 is we are going to have a very long battle. It won't be determined by the opening. White just is going to set up a fortress type of position on the king side, have a very flexible approach to the center and the queen side, and to postpone the battle far down the road, so to speak.
Well, I have mixed feelings about that, though, because I've always felt Irina's been better prepared than Anna Zatonsky in the opening stage. Yesterday, of course, was an exception.
Exactly.
But that's a little different because Anna knew exactly what Alyssa was going to play.
Right.
So she had that specific opening to prepare on the rest day. But in general, it seems like Anna's openings are a little bit less dangerous. And like Tatev Abrahamian said when she was down here, she feels that Anna's great strength is just like kind of, you know, keeping the tension and, you know, kind of inducing people to make mistakes.
Well, she's such a great experienced player and such a strong master player herself that it's not easy to outplay her, and it's nice, the idea is nice that Anna's a little rusty and maybe not the most up-to-date in her opening theoretical battles, but she's known for playing these very, very solid defenses. Just great preparation can't overcome great defense, and oftentimes you see in these championships that good defense wins.
The other reason I don't love this opening decision by Krush is that because she hasn't played a line where she can spit out the first 10 to 20 moves, I think we're almost so likely, I was going to say almost guaranteed, but I didn't want to over-deliver, over-promise, but we are so likely today to see another time scramble. I mean, even in the openings in the last 3 games where Irina has had a lot of preparation, she's gotten into time pressure 3 games in a row.
Exactly.
So the beginning of the tournament a lot steadier, but I mean, in this game where they're out of theory on probably move 6 or 7, what do you think the chances are for a time scramble?
It gets high. It just depends on the type of battle that is going to occur in the next 5-10 moves. If it's going to be an open battle, you could see a lot of things get traded and then simplified. Or if it's a slow battle where people are building up, then the possibility of time trouble really starts to loom, because both players have been favoring the use of their clock, especially Irina Krush, who has gotten down to seconds before making her moves.
1 second one time and 2 seconds another time.
Which is shocking.
Right, exactly. So I'm sure, obviously, Irina has a great coach, and I'm sure they have their reasons, but on the surface, I'm not excited about this. Although it looks like Anna is the one who's, not that I'm not excited, we're going to have a great battle, but I'm not a fan of the decision.
Okay, well, in this exact moment, what is Anna spending so much of her time about? She could just play bishop e7 here, go into, pardon me, bishop g2 has been played. Bishop e7 here, go into a closed Catalan or an open Catalan. But Irina's move order has given Anna the opportunity to capture early bishop g2 is played, to capture early on c4. Since this pawn is not yet on the d4 square, oftentimes we see this variation: queen a4 check, knight d7, queen takes, or let's say castles, a6, queen takes c4, d5, and c5. And because the pawn is already on c5 before white's pawn is on d4, we often see this type of line d3, and black has been known to get pretty even play out of this specific variation. So what Anna is debating is, should I allow a Catalan, which gives white a small plus, or should I go for this type of position? I don't even know what the name for this type of position might be, which denies white her small but clear, persistent edge that she might get in a Catalan. So actually a rather big decision and early in the game, and Anna's taking a lot of her time to get familiar with the type of battle that's coming up ahead.
I mean, to be fair, Anna's also had some time pressure in this tournament, but it seems like
it's not as been so bad.
When she gets into the 30-second increment, it seems like her positions are a little bit less critical. Like
Right.
Irina keeps getting into the 40th move with these massively critical positions where she needs the time, whereas Anna might have been down to 30-second increments yesterday, but she was up 2 pawns.
Right, in a simplified position,
Exactly.
and the game doesn't hang in the balance. And in Irina's case, when she's gotten down so low on the clock, literally the move is critical.
And part of that is bad luck, and also some good luck, because sometimes her opponent had winning. Actually, twice her opponent had winning moves in around move 39.
Right.
So on one hand, it was bad luck because she blundered around that time, and on the other hand, it was good luck that it wasn't one move later.
Right, it's true. Well, our defending champion has played well enough in the tournament to have to put herself in second place, and in the position where if she were to win today, she gets a tie for first going into the last round. But in truth, Irina's play after round 3 hasn't been as dominating as her play in women's championships have been.
Last year was very good. With
Really
a King's
impressive.
Indian defense and
Super.
trying out new openings. Yeah, it was an extremely impressive performance.
Whereas this year's not quite as the dominating performance.
But that could also make for some excitement for us.
Absolutely.
And we have another principal battle in the U.S. Chess Championship with Shankland white against Okobian.
Now,
And a lot of people are going to be rooting for Sam Shankland in this game.
Sure, because it would bring VAR back into the pack, so to speak.
Right. It could rip up the standings completely if Shankland were to win this game.
Exactly.
Although Shankland himself, not in contention anymore.
Right, but there is an undercurrent to the battle for the U.S. Championships. Essentially, the U.S. Olympiad team is a 5-person squad. 4 players are fairly much assured. Sam Shankland is in a contest with Ray Robson, Lenderman, and others for that 5th place. So
Kind of on the bubble.
precisely, they're precisely on the bubble. So Sam wants a good result out of this championships, as does Ray, as does Alex Lenderman, to give themselves a boost to get into the Olympiad. Daniel Naroditsky is still a little. His ratings aren't as high as to get him into the bubble. So
But he could just win 3 games and win the championship.
that would get him into the U.S.
right.
Olympiad. That would get him on the U.S. Olympiad team for sure.
I mean,
Yes.
if that gets him a playoff, there's a
Right.
chance of it. Okobian would have to lose this game. So we always talk in this tournament about Okobian's big choice between the French and the Caro-Kann. This game he did
Chose the
favor the
Caro-Kann.
Caro-Kann, and
Right.
we have this principled advanced variation.
Let's take a quick look at the game. So Sam opened up with the most aggressive E2, E4. You need to know a lot of theory to handle this opening move well. C7, C6, the Caro-Kann. Black jockeys for control of the center as well, brings his pawn to D5, attacking white's pawn on E4. Lots of choices by white, but consider the most aggressive choice is the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann, exactly what Sam played. I'm pretty sure VAR had expected that. Advanced variation, bishop F5.
Now, why is the advanced variation so much more popular in the Caro-Kann? Well, it is more popular in the Caro than it is in the French.
By far.
Yes, why is that?
The principal reason is that in the French, in the Caro-Kann defense, this bishop on C8, oftentimes, for example, in the main line, can develop itself rather early, as we're seeing here. In the French defense, e4, oops, I beg your pardon, e4. This is the French defense, e7, e6, d4, d5. The bishop on c8 has a hard time finding an effective square. In the advanced variation of the French, after the move e5, there are many variations where the b7, b6, followed by bishop a6, black can easily trade off his light squared bishop. Now,
so you're saying that actually the bishop is better in the French than the Caro-Kann, which is kind of the opposite of what a lot of people would think on their face, like on the
surface
level. Yeah.
On the the idea of the advanced variation in the Caro-Kann is, as we'll see for a moment, basically the battle of ideas says the bishop actually on f5 is misplaced, and I will try to take advantage of this bishop on f5.
That's right.
The bishop on c8 is poorly placed, but if black can execute a trade of the light squared bishops, then it's not a poor piece at all.
And you've done that plenty of times yourself.
Plenty of times myself.
Now, I think another reason is that pawn on d4, because we've already played c6. Remember yesterday we were talking about how if in the French we could firmly defend that pawn on d4 and play bishop d3, life would be lovely.
Yeah, it's a dream position.
But it just turns out that tactically you get to put so much pressure on that d4 pawn that we can't really play in our ideal fashion. We have to make some concessions really early on.
Right, to maintain the d4 pawn and an active bishop.
Whereas in the Caro, when you do play c5, it is a second tempo with the c pawn.
Precisely, that's the other point, bishop e2. This system, of course, was made popular by Nigel Short. I called it the short defense, and he was going to sue me for libel.
The short defense, I love that.
Defense.
So the reason that's funny for those of you tuning in is that White's not supposed to play a defense, White's supposed to play an attack.
Exactly.
I think, actually, I played against Antoinetta Stefanova one game where she said something similar. She wasn't trying to be mean, again, it was funny.
Right.
Where I played like a G3 line against her famous Scandinavian. She always used to play the Scandinavian.
Exactly.
And afterwards, I got a pretty decent position, and somebody asked after the game, what do you think of the opening? And they were like, it's a solid defense.
Nice.
Same joke, yeah.
Exactly.
And appropriate for that opening,
Right.
for sure.
And what we have seen here by VAR is VAR has indeed played the move c6, c5, and what you just mentioned yourself is this is actually a kind of a loss of tempo. You see that c-pawn stutter stepping its way to c5. So what White does now, I believe he has done, is castled. And what he does after the move knight c6, I think all of these moves have been played. c2, c3, that wasn't the move that I was about to lead up to in a crescendo. White usually tries to take advantage of his slightly superior development by playing the move c2, c4. This is the most challenging and blowing open the position early. Black's king on e8. Notice very importantly that all the pieces on the king side are still on the original squares. So it's going to take Black quite a number of moves to get his king into safety on the king side. In the meanwhile, with the move c2, c4, White tries to blow up the position and take advantage of his superior lead in development. c2, c3 is a quiet move, just reinforcing the d4 pawn and asking Black exactly what he's going to do in terms of his development. In my match with Spassky, this was the approach that Boris took against me. But in truth, I actually got a very good position, and I even won that game, and I won the match. I consider this move less challenging than c3, c4. I'm sure Sam has some very specific reasons why he chose that move.
Well, one interesting thing about Sam is that he's an e4 player for the most part, but he must not like playing against the French, because I noticed in his 2 games with White against VAR, he's actually played d4. So that's very strange. And, you know, Bobby Fischer famously didn't like playing against the French. There's a lot of e4 players who don't like the French, and he probably also just thought that VAR was good at it. So he deviated in those 2 games, and now he's going back in this critical match for Varuzhin into his typical e4. Now, also for the U.S. Chess Championship, you want to take a look at our defending champion, Kamsky?
Yes, by all means. Let's a
The
crucial...
excitement in the U.S. Championship is going to be really big, in my opinion, because I think that Sam Shankland is going to really fight for the win in this game.
Oh, without
question. Of course, every player would, but I think the clash of styles here is likely to lead to a really exciting contest.
Well, I mean, Sam has the perfect opportunity to play the role of spoiler. Not a great outing. I expected more from Sam in this tournament. I'm sure Sam expected more of himself as well. But to defeat the tournament leader is kind of a nice secondary prize.
Exactly. If he wins, he redeems himself in the public eye to some extent as well, and that is important. I think that's especially important to some of the younger players. They like the attention and they want to be stars. And
of course,
it feels good to win on the biggest stage.
It's interesting. Okay, Gata today plays against Mac Molnar. Mac's debut. Not too much was expected from Mac in his debut. He's just happy to be here and compete with the elites. He probably would have liked a better result, Sergei Ehrenberg. But the players, I'm impressed with Daniel Naroditsky. Obviously, Daniel's played an excellent event. Ray's got to be disappointed with his performance. Sam's got to be disappointed with his performance. Both of those great stars wanted to shine in this particular field. And again, the Olympic spot is up for grabs, assuming, it's not a rating, a lower rated player wins the event.
Now,
anyway,
Josh Friedel, proving that he really belongs here, having a very solid result.
Although not as young as the...
True. It's kind of like more, I think he's probably about 29, something like that, yeah.
Mid to late 20s, yeah. But returning to the game of Gata Kamsky, let's just see how that opening unfolded. As we know, Gata has a reputation for slow playing it. Slow playing it in the opening. 27 years old for Josh. D4 knight f3, and again, Gata chooses a London system, bringing his bishop out here to the f4 square. I remember I did this against Dr. John Nunn. John Nunn was really famous for his King's Indian defense play, and I said, okay, I'm not going to go into the main lines with John Nunn, and I brought my bishop out to f4 as well.
Joy Bray plays the Silverman.
Does she really? Good for her.
Yeah, I think you were helping teach her.
Yeah, that was so much fun at the Girl Scouts exhibition. H2, H3, just a quick explanation about this move. Obviously, the pawn does protect the g4 square, but far more importantly, what White's intention is to give this bishop a retreat to the h2 square should Black ever challenge the bishop with the move knight h5. So it's a kind of a preventive move.
Or sometimes d6 to e5 occurs, and we play bishop h2 in advance of that.
Exactly, d6, e5. The bishop, again, just has a nice little comfortable home from the h2 square. So all of these moves are very standard. Although bishop e2 is, okay, some debate about this move, bishop e2. Lots of folks, including myself, prefer knights before bishops as a principle. The reason why we might want to play the move knight bd2 is because it stops. It doesn't just discourage, it simply stops the counter-attacking move queen b6, eyeballing this pawn on b2, because after knight c4, not only does the knight protect the pawn on b2, it attacks Black's queen. Black's queen just simply loses a tempo. So the idea of knight d2 as opposed to the move that Gata played, which was bishop e2, was to stop queen b6. Mac took advantage of White's move order. Not surprisingly, he developed his queen and said, hey, listen, your pawn is under pressure, I'm going to take your pawn. Gata stopped that with queen b3. And now I've always thought that the move bishop c8 to e6, attacking White's queen, was a good equalizing move. I think that Gata, although Gata likes these slow positions, and my goodness, how many players has he outplayed in positions where he had no advantage? After the move bishop e6, I think Black is doing simply fine. Comes out of the opening with a good position.
But as you mentioned, Gata Kamsky is no stranger to winning from an equal position as White.
Absolutely. He just simply grinds and he outplays his opponent just based on his superior skill. That's what it comes down to.
So yeah, those are the critical games we have in the championship. Kamsky, Molnar, Shankland, Okobian, and Lenderman, Naroditsky.
Although yes, exactly. There was one other key game in the championship that I did want to take a quick look at. It is in the game between Alex Lenderman, who is in a tie for second place. He's playing, going up against Daniel Naroditsky, who beat Sam Shankland in this precise opening of the King's Indian defense. Let's take it from the top just to see how the players got to the situation that they did. An English opening that quickly transposed into the King's Indian defense. Again, this is an exact replay of the game between Shankland when Shankland was white and Naroditsky was black, a game that Naroditsky won. Captured on d4, played the move rook e8, attacking the pawn on e4, provoking the move f2, f3, knight c6 quickly by Daniel, attacking this knight on d4. This gives white an opportunity to do what he did in the game, which was capture and double these pawns. Now, it's one of those things we can debate endless to the end of time. Are these pawns weak, the double pawns, or are they an asset? In a sense, this pawn on c6 is a key asset because it does control the d5 and b5 squares. But it's all about the battle of ideas. Queen d2. In that game between Shankland and Naroditsky, we saw that Naroditsky brought his bishop to e5 early. He wanted to come over here with queen h4. Now that, after queen d2, now that these pawns are doubled, there is a half-open b-file so that the rook could swing over to the b-file and put pressure on this pawn on b2.
Instead, Daniel decided to lash out in a different way.
With f7, f5 perhaps?
That's right.
Yes. Okay, I was about to say that it's nice to put the rook on b8. You just want to be sure you do it at a time that you don't leave the a7 pawn hanging. f7, f5 was in fact Naroditsky's decision, attacking in the center, menacing the possibility of bishop takes c3 and capturing twice on e4. Also, preparing to reroute his knight and bring it back into the game. The players are still deep into opening theory.
And playing very quickly.
And playing very quickly. I'm sure Lenderman was well prepared.
Especially Lenderman.
Yes, he would have expected, he would have studied Daniel's games and expected to see this variation on the board. Let me just get an update.
Now we have something interesting in Shankland Okobian.
Okay, and let me just get an oops, excuse me. I just wanted to get, yeah, rook d1 was played as in response to f7, f5. I would expect Danya to retreat his knight. Pardon me, in the game of Okobian's
Yes,
game?
so there's been a capture on d4, and Sam has recaptured with the knight.
Right. Okay, let's just go back a quick second. So this is where we saw this move c2, c3 by Sam Shankland. I believe against Boris Spassky, I played the move bishop f5 to g6, just preparing to play knight h6 to f5, but that was not Okobian's choice. He resolved the tension in the center with c5 takes d4. I don't like this move. I don't like this move for the simple reason that keeping that tension actually benefits black, and after knight takes d4, a very nice recapture, by the way, by Sam. There's a hit against the bishop on f5, and if you play knight takes e5, knight takes f5, e takes f5, the theoreticians that spend their lives studying openings have determined that not only is this pawn sacrifice good for white, but black can fall into a big mess quickly.
I believe it. I mean,
Rook e1,
check,
exactly. And that king,
very dangerous.
Exactly, is still in the center of the board. I'm sure our tournament leader, Var, wanted nothing to do with that variation, and so he played a different move. I believe he captured the knight. But
either knight ge7 or captures, I bet.
Yes, you're right. He played knight ge7. Knight ge7 protecting the knight as well, protecting this knight as well as the bishop. And remember, we've been talking about the dream position from the French. White has now nicely set up his bishop on d3 without having the problem of having to worry about defending his d4 pawn.
On the other hand, he has now, black has gotten rid of that bishop, which you mentioned was a target. But you like white here.
Yes, I just think that white has a comfortable edge here. Essentially, from white's point of view, this pawn on e5 is a nice brick wall in the center of the board, and it's very easy to deploy your pieces behind this pawn. So
that's right. I mean, I think that in this game, Okobian is not that well prepared. I mean, he didn't know what Shankland was going to play.
And I'm sure he was preparing for c3, c4 as opposed to c2, c3. So maybe maybe a nice surprise by Sam. From white's point of view, white's moves are very easy to see. Rook e1, knight d2, knight f3, bishop f4, and just play with the two bishops as well as an edge in the center.
That's right. If we can get this position every time, then everyone's
it's a
going to play
deal.
this line.
It's a deal.
Yeah.
It's a deal. Sign me up.
That's right.
And again, I just want to point out, boldly stating the obvious, that you can't capture this pawn in the middle of the board, because after rook e1, black will have issues with his knight pinned to his king. Black will lose a piece.
Never worry. I mean, we do have some newcomers to the broadcast, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hi, guys. We'll show you the pins and checkmates.
Exactly.
And then in a few weeks, you'll know them cold, and you can show them to your friends.
Exactly.
Cycle of chess improvement. We'd like to remind you, all those you out listening there, whether you're just starting out or you're really good, tweet us at the hashtag US Chess Champs. We are going to be giving out prizes every day from one of our sponsors, chess.com. For the best question that adults give, you get a diamond membership to chess.com, and juniors receive a gold membership to chesskid.com. You can also email us at comments@stlouischessclub.org. So keep your questions and comments coming. And we've got Grandmaster Maurice Ashley with some interesting tidbits from the U.S. Women's Championship.
Well, Jen, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And somehow it seems that the luck always goes to the strong, but not always. The reason we got to where we are today, well, a few key games coming from the women's side in the championships. First of all, this one between Irina Krush and Alyssa Melahina, where Irina got to this position, but in terrific time pressure after the move king to f6, she missed capturing on c5 here. If she had simply captured on c5, then after this move, what she truly missed was this retreat king to h1. She thought that she would have to capture back and there'll be a perpetual check, but she missed this. If she had found this move, she would have gained a full point in round 6 of the competition. However, instead of that, she ended up drawing this game. And what happened later in round 6, when everybody thought this game was going to be a draw, Anna Zatonsky proved otherwise, because her opponent, after she had been pressuring her for over 100 moves, cracked and played this move, rook to h1, and allowed the move knight to e7 check, king over. Well, she resigned before actually allowing rook to b8 mate. But Irina should thank her lucky stars as well, because last round she played against Sabina Feuser, and this position arrived on the board, and all of us, everybody thought, this is over. All Feuser has to start with is the move queen takes h6, grabbing a pawn, being up a free pawn for no reason. This king would just be miserably placed. She'd have to grovel with a move like knight h6, and then you could just castle and smile away. This position is totally crushing for white. Instead, Feuser avoided that line, ended up retreating and having an even position, and almost was pressured, not too much, but later might have even lost the game. So Irina managed to draw. So both sides collecting half points that they shouldn't have, shedding half points that they shouldn't have. But it seems like Anna has been much more consistent, and it's Irina with the up and down play. And chatting with her yesterday, you could see the disgust on her face. She really felt disgusted with the way she has been playing these championships. But as a champion, she has to clear her head and get into this game, because all that matters right now is the next few hours may actually decide the women's championships. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Maurice. It's interesting how you mentioned luck in chess, because I also play poker, and people are always asking me about luck in chess and whether there is any. And I guess the answer is that not exactly, but yes.
I always thought that there was luck in chess, but that you make your own luck. In other words, you can get lucky by correctly guessing your opponent's state of opening preparation, correctly guessing your opponent's state of mind. In other words, if you think your opponent is tired and is looking to make a draw and to trade a lot of pieces, you might correctly guess that what you should be doing is playing a long, long battle. So there is luck in chess, but unlike in poker, all of the moves are visible. Your hands are not hidden. And so the level of skill is extraordinarily high, of course.
Right. In poker, you really need a lot of volume to get that type of skill, whereas in the type of luck is even different. Like, it's like you could have made, at least in chess, even if you get lucky, you still have to make some decision to capitalize on that luck. In poker, you could have made all your decisions and still get lucky.
Exactly. All the wrong decisions and still get lucky.
That's right. So there is still a lot of similarity, but it comes down to having enough volume, right?
Yeah,
so.
And experience. Just bringing up the game between Irina and Anna. Again, I think this rival is just so intense. One of the great chess rivalries in U.S. chess history. You can talk about Sammy Reshevsky and Bobby Fischer, and Sammy Reshevsky and Reuben Fine, and Frank Marshall and his contemporaries. But these two
are going to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. They will be in the Hall of Fame across the street, and those matches that they've played with each other have been so exciting. I can just say that what happened...
Yeah, and hopefully this will be another one. Purple versus pink today.
When we got to this position, remember I was explaining Anna went into a deep think because she has this opportunity of an early capture on c4. She eschewed that and went c7, c5, castles, knight c6, building up a nice pawn formation in the center. Irina was quick to play the move d2, d4, which is a direct transposition into a Catalan, takes on c4, queen a4. And this is a very famous position out of the Catalan. I remember it very well in 1983. I was in Nikšić, Yugoslavia. I was playing in a tournament with soon-to-be world champion Garry Kasparov against Sweden's ultra-solid grandmaster Ulf Andersson as black. And Ulf went deliberately into an ending that all of the pundits at that time had said is simply better for white. He deliberately sacrificed his queen, got to this position, and played the move bishop d7. Notice you can't take the bishop because after queen takes, there's a double attack against the king and the rook. Black would be lost. What Grandmaster Ulf Andersson did was play the move bishop d7. White, Garry Kasparov played rook to d1, basically the only move in the position that gives black any trouble. Black gave up his queen for a rook, a bishop, and pawn, and Ulf Andersson drew the soon-to-be world champion very easily, very, very easily with the black pieces, and Garry was disgusted because he was hoping that this position, what all the theoreticians said was good for white, ended very easily drawn by Ulf.
Well, it's interesting that you say disgusted, because I think that that's the thing about Irina Krush. She loves to play really good chess. It's not just a competition, it's also really an art form for her.
And it's about truth and finding the right moves in the position, absolutely.
Exactly, and I think that's more of her, and then Anna's a little bit more of the warrior. So that's one of the reasons Irina Krush is disappointed. Not just her score, but she's
in her
unhappy
play.
with the play.
That's right.
Kind of like yesterday with you, when you saw these various moves being played, like king takes c6 instead of bc6. You could see that you were physically in pain.
Yeah, this painful.
You didn't like to see bad chess moves.
No, exactly. One great story, I remember this very well. It was in the 1990 World Chess Championship in New York City and Lyon. And chess legend, former world champion Michael Tal, Misha, had just taken a flight from Moscow to New York City. Call it a 12-hour, 13-hour flight. Got in a taxi, rushed to the Maklo Hotel, the Maklo Theater, where the game was being played. Came into my suite where I was doing a chess commentary. Just sat down, completely exhausted. The game was in progress. Garry Kasparov was pressing and on the attack. He had literally looked up at the screen, and we were all looking at Michael Tal. He had our attention. He's looking at the screen. Kasparov made a move. And instantly, Tal's face twisted as if he had just eaten the worst-tasting frog of his life. And it was like physical pain reaction, completely jet lagged, instantly understood that Gary had made a bad move. And everybody in the room quickly looked at the monitor to see what the blunder was.
The escargot variation.
The escargot variation. I mean, the hot pepper variation, whatever it was, yeah. So anyway, yeah, sometimes it is painful to watch when the players are under such stress and pressure.
Oh,
they
yeah.
can make bad moves.
Or watching a time scramble, it's both fun, but it's also just really, it's like, it's painful at the same time, watching like all the pressure, especially if you know one of the players and you're friends and you have a rooting interest, but even if not.
Right.
But we love it too.
Right.
And we're sure to see some of that in this crucial matchup, Zatonsky. Let's take a quick commercial break and we'll be back for more from the championship and women's here in St. Louis.
Be surprised. Be intrigued. Be delighted. The World Chess Hall of Fame in St. Louis is nothing you'd expect and everything you love. 3 galleries highlight the history, culture, and creativity behind the game. Explore chess in ways you never imagined. It's a one-of-a-kind cultural institution where rare artifacts and world-class art play together. The World Chess Hall of Fame. Mind, art, experience.
I love that clip. You always see somebody new in it. I just spotted former world champion Alexander Kostyuk in the front row, and I also spotted our current guest, Jean Hoffman, the executive director at the United States Chess Federation, was also in that awesome Chess Is clip that we just saw. And she is with Grandmaster Maurice Ashley to talk about her new position at the USCF. She became executive director in November. Remember, we had Frank Guadalupe on at the Sinkfield Cup just as she was getting elected for this new position.
Wonderful.
And she's with Maurice to talk about the future of chess in America.
Thanks, Jen. I'm with Jean Hoffman, the executive director of the U.S. Chess Federation. Jean, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Jean, what is it like to be a partner with this club, this city, these championships?
It's fantastic. We are so honored to be here and so excited to be part of what's becoming a wonderful tradition for chess in the United States. There's so many opportunities to enjoy chess here, and it's a great time now that there's the opportunity for the city to be named the capital.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
No question about it. That's never happened in history, so it's great to be the executive director under that little bit of history making on chess. Tell us what's been happening at the USCF. I understand you guys have a new status.
We just got our 501c3 status. We're really excited about that. It's part of what I would say has been in the making for a couple of years in terms of the organization really promoting chess as an educational tool and promoting chess throughout the United States.
Now, speaking of an educational tool, you just had all your Scholastic championships, the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school nationals. Sounded like there were a lot of kids who played in those events.
There were. We had really high numbers. We almost ran out of space at the junior high nationals. Dallas had great numbers in spite of any some weather issues. People still showed up and enjoyed the chess. It was wonderful.
Indeed. Tell us, we also have a partnership, I may add, My Millionaire Chess event with the U.S. Chess Federation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're really excited to promote the Millionaire Chess Tournament. It's a really great opportunity for chess in the United States. We want to be a part of things that help growing chess, new for chess, and it's a huge opportunity to get chess out there.
Thank you so much. It should be a lot of fun. So any other initiatives we should know about, should expect from the Chess Federation going into the summer?
We are just doing our executive board meeting right now, and so we're in the middle of coming up with some new, I think, programs, new things, so be on the lookout.
Indeed, we will. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jean.
Thanks for having me.
Best of luck with the rest of your plans for the future with the U.S. Chess Federation.
Thank you.
Jean Hoffman, the Executive Director of the U.S. Chess Federation, overseeing all that is chess in the United States, visiting us here at the championships. Back to you guys.
That's right. Actually, Jean and I have known each other for many years. We even started the organization Nine Queens together.
Wow.
So that's where Jean she was the executive director of that organization as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I, of course, became a USCF member back when I was 12 during the Bobby Fischer era. And the United States Chess Federation is responsible for rating all the tournaments played in the United States, deciding the Olympiad, helping the elementary, junior high, high school championships, these U.S. championships, running those events,
not
supporting.
These, but these national scholastics in the spring, those are really the hallmark events of the U.S. Chess Federation.
And then the Olympiad teams, men's and women's, or women's and open, as well as the World Team Championships. So the USCF just does a lot of chess. And there's prison chess and correspondence chess. It just goes on and on and on. So it's a real big task that the USCF performs, and they certainly have had and will have my support for as long as I'm here.
Well, now they're a 501c3.
Which is really great. Previously, they were a not-for-profit organization, but a 501c3 helps make any gifts tax deductible on your federal return. So
and
it's a big step. And the St. Louis Chess Club
is also
precisely, and the 501c3 as well. And now the St. Louis is an educational entity as well, which is even a different subcategory of a 501c3, but it's great to see the USCF making that step, and I think it's a real step forwards.
And she's also the first female executive director, which is nice.
Is she really? Is she really? Well, that's also a breakthrough too. So there's chess.
We do have a question, actually, a related question from our Twitter feed, our hashtag US Chess Champs. Old School Soul asks, why are there still separate ratings for men and women? Shouldn't a GM be a GM? Well, as we pointed out many times in the broadcast, actually, Irina Krush has earned her Grandmaster title just recently. And a lot of the women in the tournament prefer to go by their regular FIDE titles, if you will, and not their women's titles. So it's kind of like an optional thing, really. You can get the title, but you don't necessarily have to use it, if that makes any sense. Like, for instance, Tatev Abrahamian, I know that she's going to use her IM title when she gets that. Alyssa Melakina uses her FIDE Master title, even though she also has the Women's International Master title.
I see. Was the question about ratings or titles?
Well,
because there's no separate ratings.
No.
The women and the men, everybody has and part of the rating pool. But titles are different, and the titles really were used as a device to really encourage girls and women to play chess and to give them titles that were the bar was set a little bit lower, but they could get titles. And many women, including, for example, Irina Krush, have gotten their overall Grandmaster title as well.
Exactly. It used to be a really small number, but now I think it's almost 20.
Yeah, it's just exploded.
So it's really, I think that it's a controversial issue, and that I do think that eventually the titles will be phased out, but I think people fixated on it a little bit. In the end, most chess players are mostly interested in your chess rating. So don't get hung up on it. Doesn't mean that the players themselves or any of the organizers are anti-feminist just because they use a WGM title. In the end, these players are rated not invited not by their titles, but by their ratings.
And again, just a recognition for the outstanding achievements they have made. I don't have any problem at all personally with the titles, and anything that encourages women and girls to play chess, I strongly support. By the way, just in saying, I mean, the game between Irina and Anna, I know big matches all over the place, but that game really has my whole attention for this crucial round.
For the women's championship.
For the women's championship. And indeed, by the way, Anna Zatonsky has gone into that line that I had shown a moment ago, the queen sacrifice that was essayed by Ulf Andersson. Essentially, black has two moves in this position. After bishop d7, black ends up getting split pawns on the queen side. I like white's chances in that variation. Queen takes d4 is the money move. Rook, pardon me, bishop takes c6 check. Bishop d7. This was that ending I talked about a moment ago, or late middle game, if you will, where black sacrifices her queen for rook, bishop, and pawn. But that bishop on c6 is simply excellent, and oftentimes it takes white a few moves to win this pawn. By bringing her knight around, for example, a move like knight d2, rook d1, queen c2, b5, this type of thing. Lots and lots of trades, and again, Ulf Andersson was able to make a draw against soon-to-be world champion Garry Kasparov, and obviously a draw in this situation would be ideal for Anna. Other than the win, but that's even asking more than what she really needs. A draw is what she really needs to clinch at least a tie for first.
Although she was careful to point out yesterday that playing for a draw could be extremely dangerous. It's
true. You don't want to do that clearly. So let me just go and move
Somebody
again.
has not been listening to your coverage because they said, why is Anna Zatonsky taking so long on her 8th move? Isn't bishop d7 more or less forced?
Queen takes d4 is the main alternative. On our first board in the open section, not too much has happened since we last left it. We're about these parts. Bishop d3 had been played. Var, bishop c5, knight d2. As mentioned, I think white's ideal setup is simply to bring his knight to c3, his bishop to f4, develop his queen side, control the center, and hope to use the two bishops to get a significant edge. If white manages all of those moves, Sam will have a considerable advantage. So Var will certainly be aware of that and not want to play too cautiously.
Although we've seen Var in the defensive before in this tournament against Garayev, and he really fought back well. So he's a fighter, and I think this game he's going to hold down the fort as best as he can.
Of course, of course.
He's not going to choke. If he loses, it'll be because of Sam's energetic play.
That is true. That is true. He's not going to give up the point easily.
No. We got another question coming in to hashtag US Chess Champs. James Baxley asks, could you explain the difference between a strong GM and a regular GM? Isn't it insulting not to call a GM strong? Or I think he means redundant, right?
Right.
Maybe a strong GM is that redundant?
Well, no, it kind of goes backwards and forwards for a quick second. I think really, instead of using the word strong, what grandmasters themselves like to use is to say world class. There are about 1,200, 1,300 grandmasters in the world, and when we think of world-class players, we're really thinking in terms of the world's top 100 players, those players who really have a legit shot at one day becoming a world champion. So we tend to use the term grandmasters as well as world-class grandmasters. Just a slight distinction. It's not meant as an insult to anybody.
And there's a site, the very popular site, 2700chess.com, which shows you all grandmasters over that crucial 2700 mark.
The world-class grandmasters of the
and
world.
Carlson better buy that URL, 2900chess.com, and then it'll just be one player
right.
when he gets there.
Exactly.
He's
It's
not quite there yet.
Kind of like Patrick Riley's three-peat, the NBA World Championship, Miami Heat winning 3 titles as an LA Lakers. Patrick Riley, the coach, patented the word three-peat. Magnus is going to have to patent 2900.
2900chess.com, that's right. But seriously, we do have Hikaru Nakamura, who's number 7 in the world this moment. You can check that on 2700chess.com. And I also got some word from Michael Klein over at chess.com, who says that Nakamura was playing against Jan Elvis yesterday in a 1-minute bullet match against against Evan Ju, who's, by the way, one of the best bullet players on the site. So young guy, not super high rated, only an FM, but considered to be a fantastic bullet player. Now I want you guys to guess the score, and meanwhile we're gonna head on over.
How many games did they play?
They played 168 games.
Be serious.
So try to guess the score. Well, it's 1 minute, so 168 times like 1.5, I guess an average of 1.5 minutes a game or something.
Wow. That's
maybe
a serious head-to-head
Probably 2
match.
minutes,
Okay,
yeah.
168 games.
So guess the
Nakamura.
score. You guess, Maurice guess, and then I'll tell you what the answer is. But first, let's see what Maurice actually has to say about this Shankland Okobian game.
That's crazy, first of all. I'm going to have to really think about that one. But Nakamura is a beast. He's incredible at bullet. So that might skew your guesses, folks. But we all know that he's simply the best in the world. He's just incredible. But just going to some research in this position, I looked up some games in the database, and I found that in this position, Anand himself, a former world champion Vishwanathan Anand, and candidate for the title against Carlson this year, has been in this position with black, and he played the move bishop to e7, and that has been the more popular move in this position, bishop to e7. The other move that I found is the move g6 here, preparing potentially to get the bishop here, but also just strengthening the knight itself. The move bishop c5 that was played by Okobian, that move has only been essayed twice, at least that I found in our database here. Not the most popular move and not played at the highest level. So Sam was probably not expecting this move, bishop to c5, and it looks as though he very quickly played the natural move, knight to d2 anyway, which is part of this formation. Actually, the move queen e2 would have, I'm sorry, bishop to e7 would have forced queen e2 to defend this pawn because the bishop blocks any pin along this file. But bishop c5 leaves white comfortably without having to worry about this pawn at the moment, because you still cannot capture it because bishop c5 creates, bishop f5 creates too much worry after rook to e1. So this move, bishop c5, I'm not sure if Varuzhin felt that he was playing a novelty or he's happy with the move, but it certainly is not the most popular move in this position. And as you can see there, he's intensely looking at the board while Sam is just kind of sitting back relaxed, knowing that he's in a pretty good position. Guys?
Thank you, Maurice. So this is actually a popular situation for Caro-Kann players capturing on d4. I was critical of that move. I didn't realize that my colleagues actually like to play this position because, again, in that game on our first board between Sam and Var, it seems to me that white plays essentially for free. Once white is able to bring his, let's just put some moves on the board for a moment. Let's just imagine castles, knight f3. From white's point of view, white just wants to build up his forces behind this pawn on e5, and there's not really any targets in the position for black to attack. In fact, it's probably in black's best interest to try to play a move like knight h4, wanting to trade knights, but you got to be careful always about these types of bishop sacrifices where the queen can come out here and black's king is kind of loosely dangling in the wind, so to speak. So I see a position that's easier for white to play, and that black has to be very precise in his moves to find counter chances in the position. It's really not that easy, in my view, to play black.
That's right. I mean, it's a dream to have the white bishop on d3 and a pawn on
Yeah,
a5. That's what
sure.
we kept saying that we wanted to do yesterday if we were white against the French. And that's why Alyssa ended up sacrificing that pawn on Zatonsky. Great preparation and won the game. But, you know, today, Isana Zatonsky's so well prepared.
Yes.
She's actually been thinking. She's been thinking for almost 20 minutes on that position about queen takes d4. Don't you find that a little odd?
Very, very, very odd, because first of all, her husband, Daniel Friedman, is grandmaster. I think that they could have expected the Catalan as a very reasonable guess choice by Irina Krush. And so to have this position on the board, why she's taking so long, I don't get that. That's just not professional. She should in this moment be whipping out queen takes d4 and not spending so much time. I don't like the variations with bishop d7. Those lines of play are just simply easier for white.
And Maurice has something for us in another game in the Women's Championship.
Well, not a significant game, but a significant moment in the game between Sabina Feuser and Victoria Ni. And these two players are not doing so great at the championships right now. Sabina with white doing a bit better than Ni, but it turns out that black right now can virtually win a pawn, because if it's avoided, she will get a dominant position. It looks as if white has really messed up this formation. She's put her bishop on a3. She's got pieces jumbled on the queen side, not really coordinated. But most importantly, her d pawn is not that well placed. And right now, black could play the move knight to e6, hitting the d4 pawn, and it's not that easy to defend. Notice, of course, that this bishop chased this knight away, so you cannot go back over here. How do you defend the pawn? If you advance it, then the knight simply lands on the d4 square anyway, and your queen is relegated to more horrible squares on this side. Don't forget this bishop on this long diagonal, by the way, so you don't want to put your queen on b2 and find itself in that bishop's glare. Well, a move like queen c1 is also not that great because of this move, knight to h5, and now this knight is headed toward the f4 square. Not easy to stop all this. By the way, don't make any crazy moves trying to chase this bishop out, because all of a sudden will show up a sacrifice if you accept this knight to f4 and suddenly queen g5 and mate threats against a stripped naked king. It's just horrible over here with all these pieces clustered on this side. Black is simply crushing white in this position. No way to even think about playing anymore in this game. Really bad situation that white has found herself in only what looks like 13 moves. Terrible position for white. She's going to be challenged if this move knight e6 lands on the board. Guys?
Totally agreed. That looks like a terrific idea, knight e6 and knight d4. Black seizing the initiative very early in that one. And another game I picked up on board 2 between Alex Lenderman and Daniel Naroditsky. After Daniel got in the f7, f5 break, it looks to me like he's got a very comfortable position with black, and Daniel will be very happy with what happened. We'll just go back a second to see how we did get here. We did see this move f7, f5, attacking the pawn on e4. Lenderman played f3, knight back to f6, bishop d3, takes, and we're seeing a wholesale trades if Lenderman went for a line like trading all of these pieces. These pawns on the queen side and in the center are not weak, and I think that black is actually just simply equalized in this position. So Daniel Naroditsky looks like his King's Indian defense keeps holding up in these U.S. championships. The King's Indian defense has a reputation of being a risky opening, a risky defense, ceding white too much space, but Daniel has just played very easily in his games as black and has done very well with his favorite defense.
And we do have some moves in the Women's Championship. Knight e6 was played by Victoria Ni, And Anna Zatonsky did go in for that line with queen takes d4, but not without thinking for about 20 minutes before she did it.
Yeah, and again, I just like talk, bad, bad, bad. You know, sometimes you get this luxury, like, you know, obviously Anna can actually move very, very, very quickly when motivated to do so.
Yeah, we saw some evidence of that earlier.
Wow, wasn't that dramatic, by the way? That one of the greatest showdowns of Armageddon playoffs we've seen on video. But sometimes that can lull you into a false sense of security, so much so that you badly mismanage your time. So I'm one of those that, you know, if you know what opening you're going to play, and just play it, just get to position and conserve that time for when a critical moment arrives down the road. So we have seen Rook d1. I assume we are seeing queen takes d1 now, or has Anna played that move? Not yet. Anna has not yet played that move.
No, she played bishop takes c6 instead.
This is an endgame that...
and after queen takes c6, bc6, rook d4.
Yeah, this is an endgame that Vladimir Kramnik absolutely loves to play with white, and he's been very successful. Black's split pawns on the queen side promises white a very, very comfortable long-term edge. Not easy to win, of course, but black is suffering needlessly. I don't like this choice at all by Anna.
She's not really living by her statement of the other day.
Right.
Yeah.
She really is seizing the defensive and playing it too passively, in my opinion, and she's giving Irina a free hand to try to press an advantageous endgame against her. Not a wise decision, in my view.
Maybe she didn't know about this variation. That's what you would think, right?
Well, then shame on her twice. She really should be very familiar with that queen sacrifice, because it's a classic, and Garry Kasparov has talked about it in his books and in many, many interviews of what a great impression that had on his career, that he was unable to win that game against Ulf.
Speaking of discussing, you know, studying the classic games, what did you think? Did you come up with a number for me in the Nakamura Duke?
I'm going to say 102 for Nakamura out of
actually,
168.
We got another try from Diagram Worthy on Twitter. He said 150 games for Nakamura. The truth was 160 wins and 8 losses.
Oh!
The guy Evan Drew is rated 2,700 in bullet chess.
What a domination by Hikaru. I thought the guy was a rival. That sounds like a wipeout.
That is a wipeout, indeed.
Oh my.
I was going to guess 120, by the way. I felt Nakamura. I know Nakamura is incredible, but 160?
Well, here's the question.
I'd even lose 8, actually, if he can win 160. Seems like he shouldn't be losing at all.
But how could the fellow withstand 160 losses? I mean, that's like being beaten like a drum. I mean, at some point you got to say, time out, I quit.
How many opportunities is he going to get to play Nakamura in bullet? You know, he's one of the best bullet players on chess.com. Right. He probably sees it as a great opportunity to play somebody better.
And
it might not repeat itself.
Of course I understand, but you can only take so much. I mean, you know,
I agree with you, Yash. I remember once I played Roman Gingiashvili when I was a up-and-coming player. I wasn't even an IM, not title, but of course the great Gingy was a GM. And we played 10 5-minute games, 5-minute blitz. And the score was 10-0. He beat me every single game. Once we were about 7-0, I felt like I was never going to win a game. And then we got to 10-0, and the brain is just mush after that.
Right.
I don't want to play this guy.
Right.
You're better than me right now.
Right.
Forget it. I mean, later we would only play one over-the-board game when I was getting my first GM norm, and we drew that game. By then I'd gotten better, but boy, did he give me a lesson. And it's really hard. I can't imagine Nakamura winning game after game after game. What are you thinking when he wins game 100? Okay, stop. Enough, respect.
Right.
Incredible. That's an incredible score, and also incredible that the guys just stuck through it.
Wow. I mean, in boxing, they have trainers that throw in the towel, you know, like
that's about 3 towels.
I got to save my fighter, you know, from serious brain damage. 160 to 8. Oh my.
1 minute can be pretty addictive.
It is. It sure can.
You're losing 160 games.
That's not as addictive, is it?
I'm sorry. Even addicts don't go for that.
That's some form of masochism. I don't understand it. Wow. Wow. Okay.
So get your 1 minute skills beefed up, guys, listening out there.
Okay.
And actually, those games are archived if you want to study the intricacies of the 1 minute match. They're on chess.com. So.
Oh, there's a library of games. Very cool.
Like the classics, the 1 minute games. See if you can tell. You know, it would be fun to show tactics from classics and 1 minute games and see if you could tell the difference. Like how many you figured out. Like you don't have to solve the position. You have to say whether it's a bullet or a classic.
Right, or rapid or something like that, right?
That would be really fun.
That would be crazy.
And we actually have for you guys a real classic, Fischer Oscar Pano, and that's from Buenos Aires, 1970. And once again, you were challenged to find the correct move for Bobby Fischer. And while you guys solve that, we're going to be taking a little break, and we'll be back for more from the U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's Championship here in St. Louis. And did you guys all figure out how Fischer reeled that win in? Maurice Ashley has the finale for us.
Indeed, Jen. This one was actually a little bit complicated, the way he got here. And the position that was put in front of you was a position that sort of showed the ending. So we'll go back a couple of moves to show how Fischer handled himself. In this position, he's played the spectacular move, bishop to e4. So when I saw that diagram come, I was like, isn't this from some famous game? And it was against Oscar Pano in Buenos Aires. And Fischer played this amazing move, bishop to e4. You dare not touch this piece because you're going to simply get wiped out after knight takes. And here comes a knight into f6. And then he's going to rip off on h7. And that's going to be all she wrote. So the real spectacular move, the real find is bishop e4. That's what makes this position Fischer-esque. The game continued with queen to e7. And then knight takes h7, another spectacular shot by Fischer. I believe in this position, Houdini was suggesting something like knight to f5, but that's not going to work out. Sorry. Let's just stick to what Fischer did. Knight takes on h7, a big-time move, and now knight takes knight, and then pawn takes pawn. And the attack, the beauty of this position is how the attack just flows naturally. There's nothing that black can do to deal with a knight showing up on the h5 square. If you try to bring your queen anywhere close, then simply bishop takes h7, queen takes, and queen takes e6 check, picks off the knight on c8, and that's going to be all she wrote. So it means that there's nothing you can do to change this cluster of white pieces, and particularly this knight going to this square. His opponent played knight g5, knight h5, and now it's just over. Knight's coming into f6. That's going to cost your queen a couple of moves just to be desperate here. Knight h4 check, king to g3, knight takes on g6, knight f6 check, and after king to f7, queen h7 check, and there's only one move here. His opponent resigned rather than face this finish by Fischer. So beautiful moves. Bishop to e4, also knight takes h7. Take a look at Fischer Pano, the whole game. It's a great King's Indian attack that Bobby Fischer specialized in. Something you might want to add to your game. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Maurice. That's right. We saw Kamsky win a critical game here in the U.S. Championship against Lenderman, who he's now tied with in the rankings.
Right.
And that was also in the King's Indian attack.
That's a beautiful model by Bobby Fischer, I just have to say. That's very nice. And I picked up on the game between Kamsky and Mac Molnar, and it's kind of funny. It brings back memories myself. Gata has a dream position as white. This is absolutely the best that white could ever achieve out of a London system. And remarkably, back in Belgrade, I think in the, boy, I'm having to guess which year it is, but it was a tournament in Belgrade where I had exactly this pawn structure as white against Gata. And I had him cold. Totally winning position. Gata swindled me for a draw. I still remember that. And Gata said, what did I do wrong? I got this horrible position, and we looked at it in the post-mortem, and I was showing him why this position is just so very good for white. The real issue is this pawn on c5. With this pawn on c5, it's constantly under threat. It stands out like a sore thumb, bishop e3. That would provoke the move b7, b6. And then white can bring his rook to a6, castle kingside, double rooks on the a file, and although it doesn't look it, in truth, Mac's position is really close. I mean, really on the edge of simply strategically lost. That is to say, black doesn't have to make any more mistakes from this position. I'm expecting Gata to reel in the point from here in a smooth Kamsky-like fashion, and that is going to put real pressure on Okobian, our tournament leader, as we go into tomorrow's key matchup between our leaders. So I'm thinking Gata is going to win this game, and let me just go to our tournament leaders game, and as a matter of fact, to see how that game has unfolded. We'll go back a move or two. When we had left it, we've left it after that move bishop c5 instead of the move bishop e7, g7, g6, and knight f3 was played right away. I'm not sure if I like this move knight f3 so much. I think that I would have prefaced the move knight f3 with the move queen e2, and in short, what I want to say is I don't want to allow a trade of knights. Sam didn't feel that that was important.
So you're saying that if you had your queen on e2 and then you played knight f3, knight h4, you don't have to
trade knights. I can move my knight to g5 or someplace else. He went knight f3 right away, and I think that this was a very crafty and deep. In my opinion, Okobian shows good understanding by playing knight h4 and wanting to trade off this knight, which is the defender of the pawn on e5. And he did that quickly.
Now,
and
okay, yeah, gotcha.
Rook e1 was
and
played.
And now knight takes f3, queen takes f3, and this is what we have on the board.
And I'm not saying that Sam doesn't have an edge. I really do believe he does have an edge. After all, Sam has coaxed this move g7, g6. The bishop is ready to play bishop h6 and control all of those dark squares over there. And here again, I'm kind of thinking that maybe the bishop on c5 is misplaced. And what Maurice was saying, we understand that if the bishop was on e7, black would have a move like bishop g5. Now that the bishop is on c5, Okobian still a long way from equality in this game, and Sam's got an edge, and he can feel that Gata is breathing down his neck on board 2.
That's right, a very comfortable position for white, but you feel that the more pieces that are traded, the closer...
The greater white's advantage would be.
Right.
He would like to have more pieces in this position than fewer.
Now, by the way, the names right here are wrong. This is actually the game Shankland, Varouge, and Okobian.
Exactly.
So. And we do have a guest with us now. We've got Grandmaster Robert Hess, who's also with the Sports Quotient. And, you know, I heard something interesting that he was up late last night, not partying, but rather watching the 170-game bullet match. So maybe he can give us some insight on what he learned from Nakamura's bullet tirade, in addition to the insights in these games.
Thanks, Jen. With Grandmaster Robert Hess of the Sports Quotient, junior at Yale now?
Just finished my junior year.
Just finished your junior year, and big basketball fan, big sports fan, fellow New Yorker, of course. So glad to have you on the show.
Thanks, Maurice.
So you were up watching 168 games? Is that real?
Let's not let Jen fool us. I was also watching Sports Center at the same time. I was with Mike Klein. I had my laptop open, but Hikaru was playing Evan Ju on chess.com. They played like almost 180 games, and Hikaru only lost 8 of those games. So,
yeah, we heard. Yeah. Is that mind-boggling?
Yeah, it was crazy. And Mike and I were just like, is this a joke? Like, I mean, he's just that good. You know, there's no stopping him.
He is just that good. Incredibly fast. He grew up on a steady diet of that. Did you do that when you were a kid? Play all those Blitz games?
Not really. I mean, definitely played on ICC and now play on chess.com a bunch, but definitely not too much Blitz. And I've always used a touchpad, so it's not good for bullet chess.
No, not at all. He must pre-move like crazy. The hand speed, the mouse speed.
Yeah, he's insanely good at bullets. It's unbelievable.
Indeed, indeed. Incredible player. Well, take us, you've been commentating over at Leicester's with Grandmaster Ben Feingold. You know, you got the cushy job, you got the food coming all the time, and you get to talk to the fans there. It's a great live scene. Tell us what you find interesting so far in our top games. Let's start with Shankland versus Okobian.
Yeah, you know, at first, Shankland was blitzing out the opening and it looked really good for him. He plays the Caro-Kann as black, so I thought psychologically that would be a good choice for Shankland to be facing it. And then black made a very weird structure with bishop to c5 and then went g6. I was thinking if he's going to go g6, he goes first, g6, and then put the bishop on g7. So I think the bishop's in the wrong diagonal. White has a slight advantage, and he's just going to press for the rest of the game. Yeah,
this move, bishop c5, was unusual, but then to add g6, as you said, seems very strange. Let's go to the person chasing him, the 4-time U.S. champion, Kamsky. What do you think about his position?
Yeah, you know, he's played this system so many times. He's beaten so many great players in the system, but I actually don't like his position that much. I think black is perfectly fine, and if the person playing white weren't Kamsky, back over at Leicester's, Ben and I would be like, what is white doing? But because it's Gata and he's so strong, we see it and we're like, well, you know, white has this going for him and this going for him. But in reality, I think black is doing perfectly fine. Mac Muller is playing very solidly and you should be happy with
Yasser Seirawan says he's dead lost, is black, virtually.
I'm surprised Yasser would say that because he loves squares. And over here on the king side, it looks like black is the one with the nice bishop coming and the squares are a little weak on the white king side.
Did you think G5 was maybe too much of a concession in this position?
Yeah, I definitely didn't. I thought actually maybe the knight would have come to H5 and not be worried about and later bishop takes H5 and weaken the pawn structure, because in the position I think black needs to be a bit active. But still, there are not that many weaknesses for black. So this game I imagine to go a very long time. But black so far I think is set up well.
Okay, some controversy among our leading grandmasters here. Let's try another position. Crush Zatonsky. Now this position, Yasser was recommending the endgame, that famous endgame with Kasparov playing against Ulf Anderson.
Right.
But instead, she has opted for a line which really, now this move F5 we hadn't seen. This looks terrible for black.
Yeah, it's really not a good position for black. However, I think it's sometimes hard to show your advantage. And I think both players are very well aware that white is better here. But to win this game, and that's what Crush has to do, that will be very difficult, to prove that advantage with every move steadily increasing that edge, because in a few moves, if white's not careful, black can become closer to equality. Not necessarily equalize, but with every move that's not improving the position, black has chances to come back and fight.
Why do you say that about this particular position?
Well, because the square on D5 will be important for the black knight. So if you allow me to take on E4, or if you take on F5, my knight will have this D5 square to penetrate with, and look at white's queen side, it's underdeveloped. Not saying black is well developed. We see everything is kind of in their beginning position. But still, if white doesn't prove quickly that initiative, then black can maybe unravel and at maybe some point sacrifice a pawn again to a drawn like rook ending or something.
Exactly
like
what I was thinking, that this c-pawn may not be long for the world, but this 2 against 1 may not be so easy to win when all the pieces are traded off, especially with the black king ready to fight back. So yeah, not great start for her, but she's clearly fighting for a draw here.
Well, she's fighting for a draw, but I also think it's perfect for Irina Krush, because she needs to win. We all know that. But she also doesn't have realistic chance to lose this position. It's not a double-edged position where she'll overpress and just lose because she's trying so hard to win. So it's really a safe choice for her. And I don't think either player was prepared for this opening at all. They seem to be spending a lot of time, and I don't think they have played this position with either color. So I was very surprised to see it, but definitely bodes well in Krush's favor.
Indeed. And let's take a look at another game, if this thing will listen to me. This game, Ramirez Onishchuk, it just kind of jumped out at your eyes when you first sat down, and it looks as though black is down a pawn, but you feel that actually this is worse for white.
Oh, I definitely do. It's funny because we were looking at Lester's. All of a sudden, this move knight takes d5 happened, I think, right over here. And we see, well, wait, black's missing a pawn on d5. However, if we look, there aren't that many good squares for the white pieces. And how the game's gone on in the given position, black has a simple plan of rook to d8, rook to e8. This e2 pawn might not last long. This queen could come over to h3, followed by knight g4, looking very risky on this side of the board. That bishop on b6 is eyeing f2.
And dominating this knight on b3 as well.
This knight on b3 is not a good piece. And I've always heard the saying about knights on b3, b6, g6, and g3, that once they're there, they often don't move again. And I'm wondering when the next time that knight's going to move again. So I think despite being down a pawn, black has a pretty good position and great fighting chances for a win.
Indeed, I love this position with black. You know me in open positions. The compensation, that's what I love. And finally, let's take a look at a critical game between Lenderman and Naroditsky. Lenderman is chasing Okobian at the moment. Looks as though Naroditsky looks like he has equalized maybe? Slight weakness on the queen side.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because early on, Lenderman was playing instantly. Every move was bang, 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 bang. But then a couple of moves in a row, Naroditsky spent a lot of time early on, and then his responses were very quick. Snap, 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 snap. And now it looks like Naroditsky's out of it. And I think that's been the trend in the tournament for Lenderman. He's been playing some very good chess, but in games when he's out of his element, he starts spending time, and you can tell when his position is becoming worse than it was a couple of moves ago. His game against Shankland was just like that. Instead of blitzing out the opening, he spent a lot of time, and Shankland, you know, as we saw, played a nice game and beat him fairly easily. But here already, I think black has equalized his a4 move at the right moment to weaken the white queen side. And you know, there aren't as many threats as there were a couple moves ago. The knight became on d3. It could have maybe been on e4. It was there a couple moves ago. This bishop on f2 doesn't really have a great future. So if we just look at the minor pieces, Maurice, which bishop would you rather have?
You know what I want.
This one right here, this baby on g7.
Beautiful. Well, what's the over and under on this tournament? What do you think about Okobian's chances of actually winning this tournament? He's a point ahead, maybe not in a great position now. You said Kamsky's not doing that brilliantly and Lenderman's not doing that brilliantly. What's your opinion? There's 3 rounds to go and Okobian still has to play Kamsky and Lenderman.
Right, so that's the interesting part. So Okobian's been playing great chess. He started off with 4 solid draws, nothing spectacular. Then he ripped off 4 wins in a row. His position may not be that great right now, but he's still fighting, and he still has a great chance to make a draw in this game. But really, it's Gada and Alec are trying to come from behind. But don't also forget about Naroditsky and Friedel. They're a point and a half coming into this round, but if they can string together some wins, even though they're lower rated, they can also compete for the title. But you have to like Var's chances here. He is white against Gada in the next round. You know, we don't want to jump ahead because let's say Okobian somehow loses this game and Gada wins. That changes the whole nature of the tournament. But if, you know, Okobian is solid and draws, and let's say even if Kamsky wins, he's still a half point behind. And he does have to face Kamsky and Lenderman, who are both, you know, really hungry for this title. So it's everything is unclear, but I do have to favor Okobian's chance just because he has more points.
Okay, so give me specific numbers. 40% chance of winning, 60% chance of winning, 80% chance of winning the championship?
I would definitely say it's on the lower side, under 50.
That's not real committal, Robert.
You're asking me to commit a lot here, Maurice. No, I would say probably somewhere like 30%.
30?
Yeah.
And what would you give Kamsky's chances of winning this tournament?
See, they play next round. That's the key battle. You know, at this stage in the tournament, that's the real key battle. And you know, if Kamsky beats him, then that changes the whole tournament. So,
30 seems like
30 seems low.
The worst of hedging bets.
Yeah,
right?
you know, I'm actually about to raise that. You know, you know, you call my bluff, and I'm gonna have to raise it. I think probably somewhere in maybe around 50. 60%. You know, and the more I think about it, the more I think about it, he is a point up, and there are 3 rounds left. And unless we see a total collapse, which can happen considering the strong players he's playing, it's hard. He's playing so well. I think that he has a great chance of competing and winning this tournament.
Before I let you go, I'm going to give Yasser Seirawan a chance to get in on this question, Yas. What do you think about this number? Is it 30? Is it 50? Is it 60? Varuzhin and Okobian. How are his chances of winning this tournament?
Whoa. Time out. Let's go back. You have Var Okobian a 1-point lead with 3 games to go. You can't give him 30. I mean, I'd say 55% and everything. I'll agree with Robert on 1 point. The game tomorrow is going to be a huge game between Var and Gada Kamsky. That could very well decide the outcome. But I'm thinking that because Var's played very well, he's got a 1-point lead, he's got a better than 50% chance of becoming the new U.S. champion.
Well, and before you saw his position today, you might even give him more than that. I mean, his position, it seems like a little bit worse than what you would expect for just a random black position.
Well, Robert hit that one too on the head. If you're going to play the position with G7, G6, put your bishop on G7. Don't put it on bishop on C5. So Var's giving himself some problems. I'll strongly disagree about. I think that Zatonsky's made a very, very poor choice. I think that Irina is delighted with the situation. She's in a must-win situation, but I think her advantage is really very big, and I think Gada's advantage is simply huge.
One more question for Robert. For those of you out there trying to improve your 1-minute skills,
yes.
What do you think what is it that you learned from the match? Like, is there any kind of like tidbit? I know you were doing a few multitasking, but I mean, any tips for us?
What's Nakamura doing?
There was
Sports banging out good moves as well.
I think that's the secret. He's fast and he's good.
Yes,
I don't think it's much of a secret.
It's hard to replicate that. Training for that at home.
I don't know. I think he has just years and years of experience. Not to mention he's one of the top, 5, 10 players in the world right now. So putting those, hand in hand, he's a great chess player on the board. He's incredibly fast with his mouse. It's a recipe for success.
And he's been doing it for so long, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the guy it's like a steady diet since he was a kid. It pays to be a beast who just drops fantastic moves all the time and be fast. It's almost not fair.
It's a shame he's not playing here. It wouldn't be bullet chess, but he plays fantastic moves, and to see his exciting style here would be great. Especially in this tournament.
It's a thrill to watch the way he plays. He's so aggressive. He's not playing this minimalist chess stuff. He's like going for the throat, and that's produced some really scintillating victories. So, we do absolutely miss his presence here at the championship. And with him here, this could have truly been the strongest championship ever. Yeah,
I mean, his rating these days is upwards of 27.75. I mean, of course, that makes the average rating a lot higher. And, he's just a fantastic player. And if I can't see him play in the U.S. Championship and do commentary on that, might as well watch him on chess.com playing bullet matches. So
Indeed.
I'll get my Hikaru Nakamura fix and watch his great chess.
Yeah, we all like that Nakamura fix, him being such a fantastic player. Grandmaster Robert Hess, thank you very much for joining our show.
Thank you, Maurice.
Back to you guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you,
I was
Rose.
looking for something like, you know, a magic bullet out there. He's just like, be faster and be better at chess. That's what.
And play good moves.
Play good moves and be fast.
Exactly.
That's how you're good at Blitz.
Well, Hikaru wrote
People do have opening. He wrote a book, Bullet Chess.
Bullet Chess.
I do think there's probably some openings that work better for Bullet, and that's kind of what I was wondering. But
Right.
you can actually download a database. So
Right, and
maybe
just-
I'll take a look at that later.
Yeah, and just be a systems player. Just play same systems continually. Be really familiar with the patterns, the types of the types of tactics that occur, as well as the types of endings. Like if you're a French defense player, you're familiar with French defense endings. There's a Sicilian player, and so forth and so on.
Well, that's the thing that I think a lot of people erroneously might think that the more aggressive, like E4 players are always going to be better at Blitz and Bullet, but sometimes the opposite is true, because if you play the French and the Queen Pawn openings, you can just kind of like toss out a lot of moves, as you mentioned, a system opening, rather than have to have an open position where you don't know what's going on with your pieces.
One of the most extraordinary, and I really mean this, I watched him, was Tigran Petrosian, former world champion.
Right.
Tigran. But he was known as a defensive player. But he's so familiar with the types of positions. He was a really great Blitz player, and only Bobby Fischer really had the edge over Tigran and Tal in the Blitz sweepstakes. And by the way, once again, a shout out to Hikaru for being the number on the first FIDE rating list ever for Blitz and Bullet. Blitz and Rapid, Hikaru is number
Well, there's
one.
no Bullet FIDE right?
No, there's not.
Not yet.
Not yet.
He'd be number one in that too, guys.
Well, yeah.
Come on. He'd clean up
And by
get
the
the trifecta for sure.
And by the way, just to clarify, Robert was saying it wasn't 168 games. It was closer to 180.
No, I think he was estimating. We got the actual total from Chess.com,
Oh, we did.
guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
lovely. They're
I mean,
archived.
168 and 180. It's pretty close.
Wow.
But yeah,
Let me just bring up our crucial game with the ladies, F7, F5. We'll go back just a few moves so I can
no,
just show.
actually, speaking of odds, you know, I did an interview with Chess.com before the tournament about what the chances of Irina winning the whole championship were and what Gada's were. I said I would definitely take the field over Gada. With
Clear.
Irina, I wasn't so sure. I thought it was pretty close because, you know, she's the only grandmaster. She seems to be in form, playing a lot, and then really two players that have really big chances to become champion besides her.
Right.
So I thought like 50 with her, I really would have been close. If I had to pick one side, it would be very close.
Spoken like a true Las Vegas
Exactly.
knowledgeable
Of course,
person.
now in retrospect, I take the field. Obviously, she's a point behind. Even if she wins this game, you still see Anna as a very strong Blitz player with good nerves, as we saw in the famous or infamous 08 playoff, which I think we'll play again at some point.
I still think that was one of the greatest, most dramatic clips of an Armageddon game that you're ever likely to see.
Very dramatic, but also a little bit. I mean, you can look at it both ways, because it was extremely dramatic, but it was also like a little weird because, you know, when you have that fast Blitz deciding a national championship, and sometimes the rules and the movements aren't entirely clear. Like, you don't really want an arbiter to decide about like whether the piece is on the right square.
On the right square,
because then it actually becomes a mess.
Yes.
You know, that you're
Right.
interrupting the game, adding time to somebody's spot.
Sure.
Just kind of weird, like acts of God instead of chess.
Okay, but sport is sport, and sometimes you watch an NBA championship game and the refs aren't calling fouls, or they call a foul on a tiny touch, and the guys are bumping, and no foul gets called. I mean, I just see that as, you know, sport, and look, it was the rules of the time.
It was
right?
rules. We don't have those rules anymore. Now we're still going to have really fast chess if it goes down to the wire, but there's always going to be
Some increment of
exactly,
extra
so
time.
much shorter, but
Right.
still.
But I saw that clip, and I was mesmerized by it, and Irina's reaction at the end, I mean, it's classic. I mean, that's just classic.
If you don't get that, that's what actually makes the clip, right? You see them moving so quickly by the end of the game, but it didn't have to be that way, of course. In the beginning, it was a lot of play, and then it goes on, and then at the very end, that whacking of that rook.
Well, look at
that
the
piece
tension.
flying off.
I mean, Irina, you know, is like thinking, you know, every move, you know, what was the prize fund in this? It was like 20,000 to the winner or something?
No, this was not the St. Louis. It was not. It was more for the title than the money. I think the money was only at like 5,000 or maybe 8,000 for
and
the
the
It was
women,
a lot less than today.
And the title.
But the title is obviously.
But look how fast they're moving, you know, just seconds. And
pieces are just flying
and
everywhere.
Anna at the end. I mean,
and
it's
this knight flies off the board, does it? This piece, that rook, I saw it fell off the board for no reason.
And look at that. Oh, come on. That's chess.
It's awesome.
That is
it's awesome. But there was a lot of ugly controversy after it also. We have to remember.
I know.
What's wrong with ugly controversy?
Open letters, politics. It wasn't like let's play again. It's more just like desire to revoke it. It wasn't really more. It didn't make it more exciting, the controversy that resulted afterwards. I think it was just a little bit like ugly.
Okay,
well, I'm going to say
I'll disagree, but okay, what can I say?
I don't think controversy is a bad thing. Of course, you don't want any ill feelings and all that. But if you just took a look at the shot of the two of them just now, and compare that to what they were just doing, it's clear that the average audience, the lay audience, would say, "Wow, that other stuff looked like a lot more fun." Right? Of course, we want to see good chess. We want to see good moves. We want to see the best chess put forth. But if you can't decide it in one time control and you try a second time control and a third time control, at some point it's going to come down to this, right? It's going to come down to what may even be a random game, but you can't be there all day. You can't play like game 25 and draw forever. So I don't mind controversy in chess. I think it's a good thing to have really dramatic.
I don't mind controversy either. I just think that the playoffs that we had since have also been extremely exciting, and you know, Anna blundered in one of those playoffs as well. And there was also a really thrilling playoff with Anna Zatonsky and Tatev Abrahamian that went down to the exact wire as well.
Exactly.
So I mean, it was you can go back and look at some of those matches, and there was
that one with
game
Tatev
after game,
was great.
really
I agree
exciting.
With that playoffs, and that format, by the way, was great too. I really like that format instead of the format we have now, which is obviously the classic one, but the format where you play a playoff or play a qualifying stage and then go down to the final four, that was thrilling. I mean, which year was that, Jen? It was 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
That was 2010, I think.
2010.
Yeah.
That was exciting. We had Irina playing and getting knocked out, and then Tatev and Anna playing at the end, and also an exciting one where our top player, Hikaru Nakamura, he was also knocked out in that four-player playoff by Schulman.
No, that was the year before.
That was the year before. That was a different playoff. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, the one
they blur together.
The one where it was the knockout, that one I think was really exciting. I think that most fans like that, where you qualify into the next stage and then have a knockout stage where it's all or nothing. None of the games can go with that. Well, what if we draw? What if we tie? You know, that's like. Nobody's as interested in that, I should say. Even here, I love the fact that a tie results in the playoffs. I mean, that's what it should be.
I think there's a good chance we're going to get a playoff on one of the championships, and it's true that sometimes round robin can be anticlimactic, but luckily for us, the fields are tight enough at the top this year that we don't have any issues.
Right.
We've had previous years where Gata has been running away with it, or Irina's been running away with it, but this year we're really in luck because Okobian, I guess you could say he's running away with it, but at the same time, he's in trouble against Shankland. He's in a worse position, and he still has a head-to-head battle with Kamsky. So
exactly.
Just all you can really hope for with this format, that we've got so much excitement. It's almost like it is a round robin, but it's playing more like a knockout in a way.
And coming down to these
like.
decisive games, and I'm keeping a very close, watchful eye on the game between Anna and Irina. We have seen, by the way, this. In this position, it was an attempt by Anna to win the square d5 for her knight. You heard Robert Hess mentioning that in case white trades pawns, the knight would eventually come to d5, and if white didn't trade pawns, then after takes, the knight comes to d5. Well, after thinking for quite some time, Irina came up with f2, f3, so that after the trade, she keeps a watchful eye over that knight on b6. She controls the d5 square with her e4 pawn, no knight moves.
I like that, even though, of
it's
course,
very
she has
simple.
to give up some concession with some possible F-file play.
F-file has been opened, but I mean, Anna,
worth it.
Yes, absolutely. Anna, as black, needs to develop counterplay before white simply completes her development and starts tying black very seriously to this weakness on C6. I like Arena's choice very much. I like her position. I thought that she was in the driver's seat for some time, and she still is. Maurice, you got some thoughts to share as well.
Yes, we have a game that may be over in the next 10 minutes. It may drag on, but it's over right now. The position is cold cut busted. That position we showed you, I mean, this has to be one of Sabina Feuser's worst games, where she allowed an incursion onto her D4 square and then around her king. And take a look at this dramatic development. 13 moves in, black played knight to E6 as we suspected and attacked this pawn. She decided to save the pawn. A good thing right now, believe it or not, was to just ditch the pawn. Forget it. You don't need it. Maybe you're worse, but look what's going to happen to you. You're going to be much worse. After knight D4, she played the move queen B1. Look at this cluster of white pieces. Completely away from the king, all of them on the queen side. The great Alexander Caro-Kann used to do this to his opponents, somehow psych you out and get you off on one side and then just blast your king. Well, Victoria Ni is playing in that style because she recognized that she needed to go all out for the king. She played knight to H5. Now this knight is coming to the F4 square. You don't dare move anything, any pawn around your king because a sacrifice is going to happen. Right here, she played the move bishop to B2. That's just too little, too late, too slow for what's happening now because the knight just dropped in on F4 and it's just menacing minor pieces dominating the position. The move F3 was played attacking the bishop. That didn't help because of the simple bishop to H3. Nothing to calculate here. It's so easy. If you capture the bishop, well, you're going to get mated. Game's going to be over whichever way you want to go. That's mate. Oh, oops, by the way, there's a rook there too. Even if there wasn't, it would have been disastrous. So bishop H3, all these guys over here, there's nothing to defend the G2 pawn, and a queen is showing up on G5. Houdini's giving G3, saying, oh, it's horrible, just give the rook up, but you're going to die. This position is virtually resignable. A miniature in 18, 19 moves. Really bad showing for the player with the white piece. She has, in fact, played G3, and there goes Victoria Ni, who could have upset some of the apple cart in the competition. She allowed a draw yesterday against Tatev Abrahamian when she was much better. We haven't seen her down here in the interviews at all. It's likely that we'll see her today. Back to you guys.
Yeah, I spoke with Victoria after her game yesterday. She's just really having a crisis of confidence. She was 2 pawns up. She acquiesced to a draw in a position that virtually everybody would have played. And she herself said, if I was feeling more confident, I would play on. Today, she's being gifted just a simply scintillating attack on the king side. Sabina Feuser, with this move bishop A3, showed that she didn't have a full understanding of this middle game, and she is in trouble. I noticed in our leaderboard.
We were pretty hard on Timur in the round 1 when he did that in 14 moves. Whereas we were pretty easy on Victoria. I think we were busy with other games, though.
Well, it was round 1. It was the start of the U.S. Championship. He was number 1 versus number 2 seeds, and it was a powder puff fight. It was a pillow fight. It wasn't. It wasn't a sword fight. I noticed on board 1.
So you think it's better to, if you're going to take a draw in a better position, you think it's less shameful if it's later in the game? I think it's important for kids at home, though, to see their role models never do that, because kids always try to make excuses to take a draw.
Exactly.
Because they want to release the tension, they want to relax, they want to hang out.
Right.
It's like, even if you tell them never, ever, ever do it, they still sometimes do it.
Exactly.
So if you start giving examples where they can, then it's all over.
Right.
Then they'll just like try to expand that example and like. That's why so many coaches just have like a no tolerance policy, basically.
Yeah, they learn from what their heroes are doing, and that's why, you know, again, Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, why I have such great admiration for them, because they're trying and they're exhausting the position of its possibilities. When those guys agree to a draw, everybody in the audience says, yeah, I understand why. I mean, he tried everything and couldn't make it happen.
Anna Zatonsky is an amazing role model for that, too.
Yeah.
And Irina.
And Irina.
Both those players.
They
like,
play
try
hard.
To squeeze whatever they can out.
Exactly. And they deserve our applaud and our admiration and our criticism when they don't live up to their levels of professionalism that they're setting for themselves. And again, it's very important to point out to our professional grandmasters that there are tens of thousands, if not millions of kids that look up to them and will emulate their play. If they show that they come every day prepared for a fight,
Hey, you
well,
skipped
there
from
you
tens of
go.
thousands to millions. You think
Well,
you skipped
I was thinking from the United States, and then I started thinking globally.
Yeah.
So I usually think U.S. first, and then globally.
That reminded me of Adiza yesterday, talking about how Dr. Dre and signing $1 billion deal, and like, yeah,
For
if you
Beats,
don't,
yeah.
yeah, if you don't, think about that in advance and how to use that money, you might lose it all. And I'm like, well, it's probably going to be hard for him to lose $1 billion.
Yeah. It's a challenge. I'll try. I mean,
$300 million.
Still not $1 billion.
Back in the day, that's with inflation, that money has gone up. But just to comment on the draw, I have an absolute no tolerance rule for draws with my students. I tell them straight up, no draw offers, no acceptances of draws. Don't even think about it. That's worse than losing, coming back into the room. If you came back and said, oh yeah, I took a draw, what? All of the teammates will be up in arms. We just don't do that because it's a horrible, horrible habit to get into. You start thinking, I don't feel so good. I'm a little bit scared. Should I play the position? Once you get it out of your mind, you just play chess. And that's what it should be. It should just be playing chess. And the money that a person might play, we want to see chess go big time. So imagine a spectator comes in to watch our sport, and we ask them to pay to watch, and Gareev Kamsky's a draw in 14 moves. I mean, they're never coming back. That's never. They're never coming back. It's just not cool. It's just not smart, actually. It's not smart from a business standpoint for chess if it ever wants to make any strides, any inroads into the American public, particularly the American public, where a draw is really like kissing your sister.
Okay, interesting comparison there.
He wasn't the first one to use that.
Actually, that's not mine.
I
By the
know.
way, I would like to point out a game just very quickly between Ramirez and Onischuk. And Robert Hess made this point about Onischuk being down a pawn but having great compensation. But Onischuk played a very strange sequence here. After the move rook a c8, king to g2, I'm somebody who loves to sack pawns for the initiative. But after this move, he decided he has to play the move queen d5 and trade off queens. And I mean, whatever the compensation looks like in the end game, I can't imagine it's any better than in the middle game with a move like rook to e8. I mean, rook e d8 would have really challenged white here. I mean, what could white do? We saw what happened when a queen left or pieces left to go to the queen side, as in the game between Foyser and Nee. But if he hangs out on the king side, then a move like rook c2, and I mean, there's beautiful 7th rank action. There's no way to save this b pawn, or you're not going to leave the e pawn alone. How is this not good for black? I'm really surprised that Onischuk decided instead to play queen to d5 check and go into this particular endgame. I mean, I'm not saying that this position is bad for him or anything, but I don't know. I don't think I would have played this way. What about you, Yas?
I agree. I would have kept the queens on the board and played the rook c2. Alex may be feeling a little bit less confident in himself after the turnaround he experienced yesterday. He lost to Lenderman with the white pieces. So maybe just a little bit unsettled, and he felt that queen d5 was a safety kind of move.
We've got a couple great comments coming in from our listeners. Andrew Latham at our hashtag US Chess Champs says that when I was in high school, I asked Hess for advice about the Nationals. He surprised me with a very long, detailed, and friendly reply. I've been a huge fan ever since. That's a really cool story. Thanks for sharing, and yeah, good karma for Robert.
Yeah,
Respond
exactly.
to your fans.
Be kind.
And he also pointed out that don't forget Zatonsky blundering her rook in a 1 position in the final showdown versus Crush in 2012. Even though that wasn't a sudden death blitz game, there still was a blunder to decide the championship.
Right.
And we also have some very exciting news that tomorrow we are going to have a very special guest calling into the show.
Oh,
Gary
Gary,
Kasparov is going to be on the show tomorrow. So you definitely will want to be tuning in. It's going to be at approximately 2:30 Central Standard Time. That'll be 3:30 for those of you on the East Coast. So
Okay.
don't make any big Sunday plans. You're going to want to watch us all day. And with that, we're going to go to a little commercial break.
I'm feeling great to be back here in St. Louis. The U.S. Championship is my favorite event by far. You play consistently strong opposition. There's no free games. It's always a challenge right from day one.
This is my first U.S. Championship. It is my first visit to St. Louis as well, and so far I like it.
Everyone is a grandmaster here, and most people who are playing here have beaten me before, so it's going to be a very tough tournament.
My approach to chess, as cliche as it sounds, is just to play as many good games as possible. I've tried setting goals before, and all it does is pretty much sort of constrict my play.
It's going to be probably one of the last chances for me to win, so I guess my goal is to win.
Coming into this tournament, you're always thinking games preparation, openings, middle game tactics. You want everything to be solid, but I'm still trying to be realistic and just get it one game at a time.
My emphasis in the game is to learn and improve. It's interesting to challenge yourself and play stronger opponents, and that's definitely something you find in the US Championship.
I think it's maybe just the feeling of being back in St. Louis again. It's just a really, really pleasant feeling. The weather is great. It's so, you can really feel that it's summer here. It's not like that in New York.
Well, this year, I'm really trying to win the tournament. I've come close many times, so I think this might be the year I actually win the tournament.
Each year I compete in the championships. It's becoming harder and harder to prepare. I just finished with my law school exams 2 days before arriving for the championship.
Of course I will try to win, but I have to be realistic. I didn't play like any serious tournament since last US Championship. I had a break from chess, so I will do my best. I do what I can.
I think is that this is just one game I play with them, so it doesn't matter that they might be better objectively. It's how we play the one single game, so I want to put all my efforts to do just the best I can.
I really like it because it's really fun playing against new people and I get to make new friends.
My goal this year is to play fighting chess and not have a single regret with any game that I play.
My dad said, he said to play well. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Not just to get lucky, but to try to make some good moves.
Back to the 2014 U.S. Chess Championship and U.S. Women's Chess Championship here in this crucial round, where we see Irina Krush nursing a small advantage against Anna Zatonsky. Small, but also everlasting.
Serious, everlasting, yeah.
Never going to go away.
Right.
Until Zatonsky either loses or manages to simplify matters enough to get a draw.
Hold it.
And here's a graphic kind of showing us how this rivalry has gone over the years. So in 2013, Irina Krush won their game. In 2012, they drew, but then Irina ended up winning the playoff, right?
Right.
And 2011, Krush also won. 2010 was a draw. In 2009, Zatonsky won the game, and that was a beautiful game with the queen trap, rather.
The queen trap.
And also a couple of draws in 2008 and 2007, and a win for Zatonsky back in 2004, which was probably one of her very first U.S. Women's Championship. I think it was her first.
Well, those two ladies have basically dominated women's chess for a decade here in the United States and been trading titles between themselves. Anna goes into this round, obviously a point in the lead, Irina in a must-win situation, but Irina applying the pressure. Into the game that Maurice was talking about, between Alejandro Ramirez and Onishuk, Maurice properly questioned what Onishuk was